In this video, we're going to cover a solution for a request about sorting the recipes on a CDPX HMI in alphabetical order. So let me explain real quick what the issue is. If I open, let me open the HMI software. There we go. So if I open the Designer Studio, this is the software, Designer Studio. It's the software that we use for the CDPX HMI. And I have some recipes here. You can see I have 5 recipes, right? They are shown here by index number. So every time that you create a new recipe, let's say I create a new recipe here, um, it's going to ask me for the name of the recipe here in just a second. And then, oh, actually, it's right here. So this is this this is it's new, just to know which one it is. So as you can see, it's created after all of the existing recipes, right? So this is now recipe number 6. It's not ordered by the name. So if I change this to AAA, right, it doesn't go all the way to the top because it's ordered by index. Now the challenge is for this particular application is that they want to be able to look for the recipes in alphabetical order, and that is because imagine that you have 100 recipes. You wouldn't be going down looking for recipe number 2 all the way down to position number 100, right? It's not practical. So what we have here is an example of utilizing some JavaScripting within Designer Studio to accomplish this. And I'm going to show the whole script here in case that you want to copy it or type it in. So the script is down here. But first I gotta show a couple of things on the CODESYS side. So let me just do that real quick. So in CODESYS, the only thing that I have is, of course, I just created this PLC PRG just to have some declaration of variables. So I'm not even using this, but just so when I create these variables over here in my global variables, so this is my GVL global variable list for HMI. And here you can see that I have, so this is not used, but I have a bunch of different variables. So these are the variables that are going to reside in the PLC. So sorry, all of them reside in the PLC, but these are the variables that I'm going to use in my PLC code. And these are the variables that I would use for just the recipes, right? And then this is also not really used, and I'm going to show later why. But as you can see, all of those are integers, and then I have them on the symbol configuration here under GVL HMI. I have all of these variables selected with the exception of the one that I told you I'm not going to be using. Other than that, there's nothing special in here, nothing at all, just that declaration of variables, okay? So let's go back to the Designer Studio software. So what do we have here? First of all, we have a text box. So this is used for a filter. So here's where it's like a search box, right? So here you will type in whatever you're looking for and then hit the filter button. And then this will populate this combo box right here. So once that combo box is populated, you're going to get everything ordered. So in this combo box, these same recipes are going to show as recipe 1, recipe 2, recipe 3 in that order, right? And then I have all of my tags. This hand side, they are the tags in the recipe, and then the tags on the right hand side are the actual values on the PLC variables. So this is what I would be using in production. What I use, or the reason why I have these variables is this is kind of like a step in the middle before I transfer. So here I read and write the variables in the recipe. But before I transfer those values to the actual values or production values, I put them in here, right? And then the last thing is I just have read and write for these variables on the left, and then upload and download. And this is to affect the variables on the PLC. So let me show you real quick on the actual screen. And here I have a camera to show on the screen. I have a physical screen here. So the way that this works is here's the filter. So if I hit and then I type in the search term, I guess, like for instance, if I want to look for recipe one, I know that the recipe one only has a number one on it. The other ones have a different number. So I hit enter. So I type in the one and then I hit enter and then filter. Now here it sends me a message and says the filter results are what I found is just recipe one. So I hit OK. So now if I open this combo box, the only thing that I see is recipe one, right? Because that's the only thing that matches that search term, which is one. Now, if I hit read, now all of these values change and I see that these new values were imported, right? Model 100, fixture 101, and so on. So all of these values are here now. Now, let me show you something on that I forgot to show on this screen. The value of the recipes, right? So what I did just to differentiate between the recipes is, for example, for one, I have a value of 100 or values of 100, 101, 102, and so on. For recipe two, for instance, it's a value of 200 and so on, 300, like on recipe three, it's 300. So let's get online with the PLC so we can see the values. So online, it's loading. All right. So here we can see these are all the values running, let's say in production right now. Remember, the ones that these have almost the same name, GI model and GI model recipes of these two, for example, right? The ones on the top, so these ones are the ones that are, let's say are running in the production, right? And these ones are just to read and write the values from the recipe. So right now, if we go back to the screen, you're going to see that here are the actual values. So 500 through 506, right? If we go back to the PLC, you can see the values right here, 500 and 506. Now, if I go back to the screen and, for instance, download or transfer the values from the recipe one to the values on the PLC, you're going to see that happen. So I'm going to hit the download button, and now it says downloaded values to PLC from recipe one. So now you can see the values change from 500s to 100s. And if we go back to the PLC over here, you're going to see that all of these values were transferred, right? Now, let's take a look at another thing. So if for whatever reason, I already showed the download function, right? If for whatever reason there was a way of changing one of these PLC values while online on the PLC program, remember these are process values. Let's say that I set this to 1000, right? There's 1000, hit enter. Now the value on the PLC is 1000 on the model, right? Let's go back here. And you can see now these values 1000, but that's not stored in the recipe yet. And if I go back to the recipe, that value it's not stored in the recipe. And actually I can refresh these values by hitting read here, read the recipe, and you can see model, it's 100 still. But if I hit upload like that, like so, now this value of 1000 was transferred to the recipe. Right? So if I hit another read, now you can see model 1000 and that value is now here. So now you have permanently modified recipe one. So you got to be careful with how you utilize these upload and download functions, because this could affect your recipe. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this value back to 100. 100 and then write it. Then I'm going to push this value down to the PLC. There it is. Okay. Now, what if I wanted to look, I wasn't sure which recipe I need, and I wanted to look through all of my recipes. If we go back to the software, the Designer Studio, we see that all of my recipes, they have the word recipe in it, and they all have the letter R on it, right? So if I look for either the whole word recipe, enter, and then filter, now it shows all the recipes that have the word recipe on it, right? And this should populate my combo box now. Now, I could also do with R, for instance, because that letter is also included in all of those recipes, right? So hit enter or OK. And now you can see that I can go to, for instance, recipe 4. These values are not updated until I hit read. Now they are updated. They're all here. And now let's go back to CODESYS before I download, right? Now in CODESYS, you can see I still have, in production, I still have the values of 100. That was the last recipe that I transferred, right? But my recipe that I have kind of like ready to be downloaded is recipe 4. If we remember from the screen right here, this is the recipe that I have selected right now. It's not transferred yet, but it's waiting to be transferred. So if I go back to CODESYS, these numbers are ready, right? The only thing that I have to do is hit this download button. So let's press that. Now all of these values are updated. Hit OK, and that's it. And if we go back to CODESYS, we see that all of these values are updated. They were basically transferred from this to here. Okay. Now, okay, we got the idea about how this works. Let's take a quick glance at the scripting, right? What I have here is you would only, from all of this code, let me see what I can do to show most of the code so you can just grab it from there if you like. So you can just pause the video and grab the code. So line 43, let me scroll down to line 44. So there's line 44. You can pause and copy and then go all the way to line 86. There's line 86. And then go to the last portion, which is that one. Okay. So, okay, let's take a quick look. What happens here is, oops, let's see here, and whoops, there. What happens here is, first of all, I need to specify here on these, you should modify these values over here below this option here. So first you need to specify which is the field that you're reading the filter from, and this is it right here. And how do you get this? You click on this group. This group is comprised of these two elements or these two widgets. And if you open the, here it is. So this is the name. So it should be group widget 1 text recipe filter. That's the name of this box over here. This one over here, right? This filter, it's called label 3, group widget dot label 3. But we don't want to mess with that one. We want to read what's in there, right? And then the other thing that you need to specify, I didn't find another way of setting this up, but the combo tag. So this is linked to this combo box over here. And I had to create this GVL, which basically, it's this one, remember, that I told you that I wasn't using? So it's this one. I don't know really how it works or how it interacts with the HMI because it never transfers a new value here, but I just know that it works. So let's go back to the HMI. So just declare it like that, change that name here to your GVL, or I don't know if you're going to put it on your GVL or just your variable name. Then the combo ID, this is the combo name for this combo box. So I believe it should be, let's see, combo 1. There it is. This is the name combo 1. And if you wanted to change the name, you can do so somewhere down here, I believe. I thought you could. Well, maybe you can't. But anyways, so this one is called combo 1. Let me just take a last look. No. So just name it however your combo box is named. Now here I created variables just to transfer the names of my variables. In this case, I transfer the names of all of the variables that I am using for recipes. So all of this are this one's down here, right? So this would be all of the variables that I'm using for recipes. If we go back to the HMI screen, those would be, so if I go, for example, with recipe one, it's opening. Those are linked to each of the elements in my recipe. So GI model, fixture, scanner area, and so on, right? Okay. Now, these are all the functions, right? All the functions for the different widgets that we have. So here, just delete this. So here, this is the click of this button, this one, filter. So when you click this filter, and basically this is created when you click on, when you add this action, right? So when you, I guess I forgot to mention that, but to add these JavaScript functions, you select widget and then JavaScript and just add it like that. When you add it like that, it's going to create under the scripting section, it's going to create this function and then open the bracket and then close the bracket. Very similar to like C#. Anyways, so here what we do is we specify a filter. This filter, this text or txt comes from all the way down here. You shouldn't change any of this. We just set them to constants, I guess. So this text basically grabs the whatever is on the text field. So here it grabs the value in here in this field, and then applies it to filter. Then this is the filter. So when I type dr, for example, that's the filter right there. Now, okay, then we declare a couple more variables, an open array, and then we go into a for loop. And this basically scans all of the recipes that exist in your recipe manager. So for instance, in my case, there are 5. So it's going to go through the 5 and it's going to check for this filter. So it's going to check for example, recipe 1, does it have an R? Yes, it does. Okay, so show it and so on. That's what this section of the code does. Then the next section is the read button. So this one over here. And in this one, we basically always grab the value of whatever you selected on the combo box. And then it does something. So basically reads, right? So for example, if I selected recipe 1, it's going to grab that. This, I only utilize it for troubleshooting the code, but then it's going to set a tag, and it's going to set a tag. So the set tag function grabs, or it's going to write to this tag, variable 0 recipe. And remember that variable 0 recipe was this one. So under the PLC tags, it's going to be GI model recipe, and then it's going to that variable, it's going to write whatever it finds under the element 0 of the selected recipe. So in my case would be recipe 1 element 0, right? So if I open again recipe 1, it's going to grab this, right? And this value is going to put it in variable 0 recipe, which is GI model recipe, okay? And it does the same thing with all of them. You basically change the index of the recipe element. Very similar thing happens with the write values, but instead of setting a tag, it sets the recipe item. So selected, where are we writing to? The selected recipe name, and then what's the variable value that we're writing. And that's basically what happens, the index of the recipe, and that's it. Again, another message for troubleshooting. And then these are very simple. It's just basically, sorry, I forgot to mention this was write, right? So this is this button over here. And then upload and download. So these two over here, upload and download, are basically right here. And this is very simple. Again, we grab the value of the combo box, which recipe you want to read or write or upload or download to or from, and then grab the actual string of that, and then just upload that from or to the PLC. And then we just display a message. Same thing with downloading. So that's basically how this little script works. Of course, you can adapt it to your needs, but in a nutshell, that's how this is done.